Hello, I'm JW, and this time I'm going to have a look at some things which have been sent in, and they're in this box here. There's quite a lot of things in here. We'll have a look through those, and pictures of these will also be on the website at flameport.com as well. So let's have a look at the note and then dig in and see what we've got. Now, this box of things was sent in by Norman, and it was sent back in November. And if anyone else has sent things in and hasn't seen it yet, they will be got to eventually. There was a big stash of things which hasn't been looked at for various reasons, but we will get to them eventually. So thanks to Norman for sending these particular items in, gems or tat, depending on your particular delectation. And if anyone else sent things in, then do thanks for sending that in as well, but we will get to those in due course. So let's have a look at the box and let's see what we've got. Now, first of all, we've got these, which are Osram candle lamps, as it says here, made in England by the General Electric Company. That is not the same General Electric Company as the American General Electric Company, entirely unrelated, but doesn't exist anymore anyhow. So what we get here are some pretty old ones, Osram branded, and so that was made at the General Electric Lamp Works, Hammersmith and Wembley. Neither of those particular works still exist. Of course, the locations do. So these are small bayonet cap, or bayonet number 15 in terms of the dimensions there. And you can tell how old these are because they have the little pip or teat on the end there where the glass was moulded. Just see inside the filament there. Now, it's going to be very difficult to see these, but basically it says Royal Edis Swan on the top there. And these are rated 20 watts on the side here, and voltage 100 volts. Because when the time these were made, voltages were not particularly standardised across the UK, unlike they are now. Different areas did in fact have different voltages. So 100 volt lamp there, and they're still in their original boxes, obviously a bit frail and crumbly these days, but nevertheless they are all in there. And you can see this one in here as well. This is the same item there, just wrapped in the corrugated paper. Slightly different style, this one. Again, the small bayonet cap there has more sort of a linear type filament inside. And again, the same print on the side there, 100 volts and 20 watts, made in England. Next up we have these, which are knife switches, completely exposed, and they've got the little indicator there, so on and off there. Basically incoming connection here in the middle, and it just goes out here or out there depending on which way around you put it. So that will be on if you wanted to have it connected through. This isn't connected, that's going to be your off position. And we can see a bit of remnant of some rather ancient wiring going through to the terminal on the side there. All of this is live front stuff, of course, so you wouldn't want to be touching it here. You'd have to hold it carefully by the handle and switch that on and off. This is a sort of a plastic or Bakelite type base. This is a similar kind of concept. This is a ceramic base here, and we can see on the bottom here it says foreign. In other words, it was made in the Empire somewhere. And same idea here, you've got the single contact at the top there, so it just joins between the two, and that's sort of your sort of parking or off position at the bottom. And again, you would hold it by the ceramic or porcelain handle here. You most definitely would not touch any of the parts, because if you did, you would get a shock from it. And then we have this selection of various plugs and sockets, some which have plugs in the sockets and others do not. Now, these are all, again, pretty old items. These would predate the BS1363 plug, which is used in the UK now, apart from this one, which is an early example of those. This is the same pattern and design as the plugs used today in 2021. The difference mainly is that the sleeve pins don't exist here, they're just all brass all the way down, as sleeve pins weren't a thing at the time. But notice it has got little guards on the side to keep the fingers away from the pins, so you don't sort of put them around there and grab hold of the parts when it's partly in the socket. Earth pin is longer, as on the new ones, so that makes first and breaks last. And a little switch on the top there. Just got the two red lines to indicate on, and obviously no lines to indicate off. Fairly unusual to see these with the switch in the plug, certainly of this style. We did see a switched plug some while back, but that's also a fairly unusual item. Most things of the time, and we're talking probably 1940s, 1950s for this one, Most sockets then were unswitched, so putting it in the plug made some kind of sense if you wanted to switch it on and off without removing the plug. These days most outlets in the UK have a switch on them, so switch plugs became fairly unusual. Not sure whether the lid on this one is actually original to the base, because it's a slightly darker colour, but nevertheless certainly a fairly old example. Now the rest of these are things that basically predate that design, which came out in 1947, and these are all round pin things of various styles. Got a 2-pin here. This is a Crabtree one, 15 amps, 250 volts, made in England, as 90% of this stuff would be, and that's just your 2-line neutral pins there. Flex coming out the side there with a grip inside, and then get those into your 2-pin socket. Got a couple of others here. This is also a 2-pin, and another one here. These two happen to be the same pin spacing. Notably, these are not the same spacing as this one, because at the time there were a variety of ratings of these. Each different rating had its own spacing of pins, which meant they were completely incompatible between each other. So a 15 amp one here, this is presumably a 10 amp, though it doesn't actually may say on there, it's rather grubby looking. And you could also get smaller ones of these with the 2 pins down into the sort of 3-5 amp sort of range as well, and again all completely incompatible. Here we have another one. This is a sort of a side entry version with the sort of threaded grip there just to press down onto the cable. And notice these have split pins. The idea of this was that the socket just had the tube in it, and these were split to allegedly provide a better contact. It wasn't something which really lasted that long, because it turned out that the pins tended to wear and it actually made a rather poor contact, so split pins weren't a thing for that long. It was generally down to solid ones, and then the contacts within the plug being made with the actual springing components in there. Again, that one, see, is the larger one, so again not compatible with this one, but it should be the same size as the other 15 amp Crabtree there, so that would obviously fit. That one's made by Clicks, C-L-I-X, and various numbers on the front there, 2 pins obviously, and again it would just be a 2-core flex going into that. This is one of the much smaller 2-pin examples. That would be used for something like a table lamp or a radio. And again we've got this other ceramic example here, so vitreous china or ceramic base, and a fibre disc on the front there just to support the 2 pins. Drop this on the floor and it smashes to thousands of pieces. What we have here are some of the 3-pin examples. Again, these came in various sizes. The various sizes were incompatible between each other, so again you had a particular size for, say, a radio and a table lamp and an electric heater, all different size plugs, all of which were incompatible. And even worse, although you can get, say this is a 3-pin 15 amp variety, the 15 amp 2-pin plugs didn't fit in those either. So the 2-pin 15 amp and the 3-pin 15 amp were also of different spacing, so you couldn't even use a 2-pin in a 3-pin outlet because it was different size. So a lot of different sizes and shapes of outlets, and you basically had to have a different one for each rating of appliance. Very inconvenient, and that's one reason why the flat pin variety, which is this one here, was introduced as to be a standard plug which could be used for everything, rather than having half a dozen or more of these various incompatible designs. It's notable that these do have shutters on them, even though they're this old, so that's going to be operated by the earth pin, so it covers over the 2 line neutral holes until the pin goes in and that opens, and the same on this larger version here. Just a fibre disc behind there which is moved out of the way by inserting the earth pin into the socket there. Got another plug here. This again is a side entry with the remains of a bit of flex hanging out there. Got a sort of grip on the back to get that out more easily. This is another Crabtree one, and this has an additional feature in that, as well as the pins actually being sleeved, this is a fairly early example, but nevertheless that was done by some manufacturers. You'll see it's on the earth pin here, it has these notches. These are intended to go into a specific Crabtree socket. Switch had a switch on it, so when you inserted this, when you turn the switch on, it would actually lock onto this piece here, so you couldn't actually pull the plug out with the switch in the on position. You had to actually turn it off first and then take the plug out. That may be due to it being used on a DC supply. So if you take out the plug on a DC supply, then there's a lot of arcing going to happen on the pins. So it was designed so you had to physically turn off the switch, which was designed for DC, before removing the plug. But these would fit into the normal outlets as well, so this should fit into this one, and sure enough it does. It's just obviously it doesn't have that locking facility, but say intended for use with a specific matching Crabtree outlet. These are some of the fairly early examples of switched outlets there. So you've got your switch on the side there, just a dot of red paint to indicate when it's in the on position. Also shuttered. This was made by GEC, the General Electric company. Ceramic cast back here. 3 terminals going in there. Again, this is a 15 amp version. AC only on this one. That's mainly because of the switch. That's not going to be rated for DC. And the outside of this is a fairly brittle brown Bakelite material. Another GEC one here, similar design, but obviously a smaller size. And this is all plastic on the back. This is a 5 amp version. So you can see in the sort of earlier part of the 1900s or so on, it was quite confusing in terms of electrical equipment, because you would have 5, 6 or 7 different types of outlet, depending on whether they were 3-pin or 2-pin, and whether they were 5 amps, 10 amps, 15 or whatever else. And if you bought, say, a radio or some other luxury item of the time, it was certainly the case that you would buy that and then have someone come along and install a specific socket for that particular radio. You wouldn't certainly have them already in your house. It was obviously a fairly expensive and luxurious item. 2-pin one here. This is made by Tucker Telak, which kind of is where the design for this one eventually came from. 2 pins on that one, and again the vitreous ceramic base there, mainly because that was very cheap to make at the time, and early plastics weren't really up to the job of being particularly good, but ceramic base there, and then the plastic outer, ceramic being considerably stronger than some of the very early plastics, which were fairly brittle. And although ceramic is fairly brittle, of course, it doesn't obviously get busted once it's been screwed to the wall. This little tiny one, again, it's completely incompatible with the other sizes we've seen previously. Switched with a rather excessively large and clunking a switch for such a small outlet. On the back there, this again is a Crabtree item. This is a ceramic base, though it's actually brown in this case, and then the front is plastic, so it's a composite of the two materials again. Ceramic base for the strength and the electrical insulation, and then the plastic front for the more of a decorative finish, because it was easier to mould into the sort of lines or whatever that you've got there. And I've got a couple of plugs here for this one. So a little tiny plug there. This is a 2 amp version. This is a Marbo plug. And then we've got this rather questionable 3-way adapter. This is a Clang Adapter. I've actually got a variety of these on the website already. 2 amps again. This would have normally been used for things like a side lamp or something. So you could plug in the adapter here, and then you could plug in 3 lamps at the same time, or possibly some other low-powered appliance. Generally not radios, although some might have gone on a 2 amp plug. That they were generally 5s, as old valve radios did actually use a rather large amount of power. But even back in the day, it was very common to people to overload the outlets. Just say it wasn't something you just have installed just because you wanted electricity. It was more the case of, oh, we've bought a certain thing, we better have someone in to install the particular socket that we need for that. And finally, in this set of things, we've got this pendant switch here. This would have had a cord or flex coming out the top here, and the idea was this would hang down next to your bed, so you could just grab hold of it and then just turn the light on or off like that. So all the weight of this and anyone pulling on it goes on the cord itself. All made of plastic. These can be unscrewed without tools to reveal live parts and things inside. So there's your terminals inside, and the cable just goes through the top. And then this is a kind of flex grip. You just pass the 2-core flex through the middle and wrap the conductors around 2 of those points, which would hopefully prevent it from pulling out through the top. These don't comply now because you can open them without tools and expose live bits, but it's fairly unlikely anybody want one of these sort of dangling down next to their bed anyhow. Generally things go in the wall. Now I've got a few items here still in the original boxes, and this is an example of sort of packaging you would get at the time. So it's just a cardboard box printed in just 2 colours, black and orange. White would be the colour of the cardboard background. These again are Crabtree ones, and see what we've got in this box. This is a switched socket. Plug goes in the top there, so the earth pin being the one that opens the two shutters. And then we have this gigantic clanking switch on the front here. Exposed in the back there, this would have been mounted, say, on a skirting board or similar. You've got this small removable piece here for the cable to go through. The whole of the back of this is a vitreous porcelain type material, coloured brown there. And then the front piece here is plastic, or some earlier type of Bakelite type material. This is basically one of their standard light switches of the time, just mounted onto this ceramic base here with the socket obviously moulded into the top. So quite a large and clunking thing. Wires would have gone in from the back here, either directly through the skirting board or something like that. And the reason the holes are in the top is because this would have been mounted pretty much low down on the ground. So you need to put the plug in the top there, because obviously you wouldn't be able to actually get to it from the front. I notice there's no instructions of installation, because it was assumed that if you're going to buy this stuff, you would obviously know how to install it. Another Crabtree one here, same kind of packaging there. And if I look inside, it's a similar kind of arrangement. 3-pin socket again, but designed to go on the surface with it going in the front there. Another big clanking switch. And again, the same vitreous porcelain back piece, although this one is actually brown throughout there. Wires come straight in the back there. And again, the front piece being plastic, so you can just mould in that sort of more decorative appearance there. Matches one of the other ones we saw earlier. Now, of course, Crabtree weren't the only manufacturer. Here we have a Contactum. Both of these companies, or the names, still exist at least. Switch plug, 15 amps, 250 volts. Again, made in England, as the vast majority of this stuff was at the time. And this one actually comes with a plug as well. Similar construction again, so you've got the white vitreous piece in the back here. And this has a moulded brown plastic piece all the way over the top of that. But again, using that in the back there for the strength of it. And the obviously durability, metal parts obviously being inserted into that. Again, a big clunking switch there. And the plug on this one is just one of these 2-pin things, 15 amps. This plug is wholly made of a plastic material. And notice it has the sleeve pinned, although the sleeving is a bit shoddy there. It's sort of creeping up the actual sides of that. But sleeve pins were a thing even pre-war, mainly because some manufacturers chose to do that. And again, we see we've got the splits in the pins there. Again, something which didn't really last much after that. Now I've got a few smaller items here. The 5-amp new pattern Lincoln switch from Crabtree, made in England. New pattern, of course, meaning newer than the one they made previously. Obviously, this isn't new at all. It's extremely old. And I can hopefully get it out of the box here. And this will be a light switch. So back piece, again, that white vitreous material. These are basically made from a sort of a clay or type stuff and then fired in a kiln at a very high temperature. And the front piece again is that brown plastic. Little screws securing the switch on the front. And this particular one is, say, intended for lighting. Interestingly, not actually marked on the switch itself or setting it on the back there. 5 amps it says on the front here, so again, fairly normal for lighting equipment. And it's quite a nice sort of snap action there. And again, no instructions, just the actual box that it is supplied in. This is another Crabtree item. Bit of damage to the box there with the switch lever poking through. Another one of these sockets here. And again, the same kind of construction that we saw previously. And then moving away from Crabtree, we've got this Britmac Little Britain light switch. Again, this is a 5-amp device, 250 volts. That's fairly common voltage at the time before it was reduced to 240 and then allegedly 230. Paper box. And this was sort of the competing product to the Crabtree light switch there. Again, brown vitreous back here, sort of a breakable china material, and then the brown plastic piece on the front. And quite a lot of effort required to actually move that, considering it is only just a 5-amp light switch. A huge amount of metal inside these things, and generally far more robust and sturdy than modern equivalents. But then They didn't really need to be this sturdy and robust. That's mainly why so many of these things have lasted so long, although these of course have never actually been used. And the final item in this box from Norman is this thing, which comes in this rather unusual packaging. This is a Temco item. This is some kind of pressed board, similar to you get using on egg boxes, obviously used in eggs and things there. As it says here, this is a 15 amp top entry switch socket and plug. Temco on that side, same duplication on that side. And then there's the at least remains of most of the label there on the top. So this is a white one, which is fairly unusual for the time, as most things tend to be that dark chocolate brown. White was probably more expensive, but it's a very similar construction to we've seen before. The white china or vitreous piece on the back there, where the terminals things go through. This wax filling is to insulate the conductor parts inside. In theory, you could break out little bits here on the side, put the cable in on the surface, so you'd have to be very careful it didn't shatter and bust the entire thing. Front piece is a white plastic material, and again the plug is also a plastic material there. Another one of these 2-pin arrangements, unsleeved on this particular example. Again, it's another 15 amp 250 volt version, and again intended to mount fairly low down near the floor, so your plug would go in the top, and then the switch on the front there. A bit grubby this one, as most of these things are, but that's to be expected with the age of them. And again, this would fit into the other ones. It will not fit into the 15 amp 3-pin because different size spacing, even though it's the same rating. But if we got the Clang one here, then this 15 amp plug would fit into there, no problem. Although of course it looks a bit weird because it's white and the other one is obviously brown, and likewise the 15 amp plug here would fit into that one if you wanted it to. So thanks again to Norman for sending all of that stuff in. And if you have sent things in yourself and haven't seen them yet, then they will be got to. They haven't been lost, forgotten, or got rid of or anything. Just a big stack of things that needs to be looked through and done. And pictures of all this stuff will be on the website at flameport.com. And there's also a load of other pictures from the last 10 years plus of all kinds of other stuff as well, if you haven't already seen those. So that's it for this particular video. And until next time, thanks for watching.